defense team goes on to say, quote, "There's no connection between Mr. Kohberger and the victims. There is no explanation for the total lack of DNA evidence from the victims in Mr. Kohberger's apartment, in his office, in his home, or his vehicle."
I've spoken with our team. We're not sure how the state decides on Brian Kohberger. I know different pieces, but I don't know where they fit together. And the more work I do, the less I know about how they fit together. And that is critical for us to assess 12B motions. So while the court's doing deadlines,
they cannot understand the path the state took that led them to believe Brian Kohberger committed this crime. And they have stood up in front of the judge multiple times saying that there is no connection between Brian Kohberger and the victims. And I have got on here and said this is an excellent attorney. This is what attorneys should do. They should fight for their clients. But a viewer on this channel, Are You Listening 7777, raises a very interesting question. Why would an attorney speak with such absolution? And the reason she did so may be more nefarious than what you think. And if an open conversation is something you prefer, then this is the place for you. Welcome to The Point, so let's talk about it. This is, of course, a viewer-driven channel, and your comments and suggestions have been known to make it into videos in the past, and one's going to make it into a video today because this is certainly something interesting to talk about. Ann Taylor's statements very early on in this trial. "'Cause I'm leaving on a jet plane." Ann Taylor's statements very early on in this trial where they don't understand how the state arrived to believe Brian Kohberger's a guy and there is absolutely no connection between him and any of these victims. And on the surface of it, and I was one of those individuals who got on here and said that this is an example of an attorney doing her absolute best to fight for her client. Now this is of course just speculation and conversation, but Are You Listening 7777 raises a very interesting question here. Why is she saying this? Because essentially what Ann Taylor is saying is there's no way Brian Kohberger had any ties to these people. So there's no way he could have known who they are, knew where they lived, and tried to target any of them. There are no links between these two. And that's a long road to hoe when you're staring at 53 terabytes worth of data. And when you talk about what goes on in the courtroom, two separate parties in front of a jury arguing facts as they see them, trying to convince those individuals that their particular side is right. And what would you think the most important thing to a jury when listening to an attorney would be? Personally, I would say credibility. Now, if you see that differently, you can let me know. But if I'm sitting on a jury and listening to an attorney, and so far everything they are saying is being proven, in my own opinion, I would like to think, regardless of the side they're on, I would probably vote that way. And a statement like there is no connection whatsoever to Brian Kohberger and any of these victims is an absolutely bold statement to make. And she has made this statement on the record. So why would she do this? Now, there have been many people to say, well, the reason she was picked to represent Brian Kohberger was because she is a plant. And of course, once again, we're just speculating here. But this is an interesting idea based off these words. Because a lot like what this commenter said, one small slip up and it's game over. Typically, when you listen to attorneys speak, they are very general and very broad with a lot of the words that they say, because they don't want to be pigeonholed into a corner and lose their credibility. They always have an out with every single statement. Now, somehow, some way, Ann Taylor has been led to believe that Brian Kohberger absolutely in no way, shape, or form knows any of these individuals and has no connections to them. And proving that connection will be crucial to the prosecution, in my own opinion. And if you disagree, you can let me know. But the state's going to have to prove that somehow or some way Brian Kohberger knew these individuals And that was the reason he targeted the home. But if Ann Taylor is up here saying there is no connection, and the state can prove just one, how do you think a jury is going to interpret everything she says after that? They will either take it with a grain of salt or not believe her one way or the other. So is it possible that Ann Taylor made that statement intentionally? Is it possible that she's a graduate of the University of Idaho? She loves that school, she loves that town, she loves that community. And this is an underhand way to make her look good in the public, but still set Bryan Kohberger up for failure. Because she has absolutely put herself in a corner with those words, and there is no wiggle room out of it. At the moment a solid connection comes out, and the state proves it beyond a reasonable doubt, a whole lot of people are going to be thinking about this thing differently. And she has no wiggle room with her words to pivot either left or right to justify her statement. Now, I thought this was an interesting idea. I have seen the idea that Ann Taylor was a plant floating around on the internet for some time, and I haven't necessarily made a video about it because I haven't seen anything that could lead me to believe she was. Up until now, in the courtroom, everything she has done for the most part has made sense as something a defense attorney would do. But now this particular phrase, the way this viewer's looking at it, absolutely should raise a bushy eyebrow to everybody. That statement is absolutely a double-edged sword. I 100% agree. Just for myself, if I was a potential juror, and in her opening statements, or at some point during the trial, they make that statement and it is proved wrong, I would absolutely have a hard time believing a whole lot of what they say from that point on. If you see any of these things differently, you can let me know down in the comments below. Other than that, I appreciate your time and I appreciate you being here. Y'all stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next one.